Okay, so it's recording, and we'll go ahead and get started. With this class, we have just started with factoring numbers, and I think last time we picked a number that is kind of big, so that we can demonstrate how to do it. I also wrote the algorithm to. Did we finish the algorithm to find all factors of a number, or have we gotten started with an algorithm to find a factor of a number?
Just a factor. Just to find one factor of a number. We
just
started the other one.
Okay, just started on the other one. Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Have I talked about the Stuxnet virus or worm in this class? No? Okay. From the expressions, I take it there was a no. How many people have heard of it? Stuxnet, S-T-U-X-N-E-T, Stuxnet. It was a worm that has existed for some time already. I think the first time it was found was springtime or so, or maybe even before that. If you have not heard of this, you should go take a look at it, because I think this is related to computer science for sure, but it's also kind of interesting in many ways. Stuxnet, the computer worm running rampant in Iran's nuclear facilities. Okay, so this is not just any worm or any virus. This one was particularly engineered to attack factories, plants, like nuclear plants. Okay, so to talk about how this particular worm was kind of special in many ways. First of all, it has got 4 zero-day exploits. Does anyone know what is a zero-day exploit? It's, as the name implies, it has never been discovered prior to that. Okay. In other words, this particular worm, whoever wrote this worm, saved up enough, zero-day exploits, and saved 4 of those to put it into one single, attacking software, to put it into one single worm. According to Symantec and many other, antivirus companies, this is simply unheard of before. Okay, most people will find 1 or 2 and then put it into a worm or a virus and use it right away. This, whoever was behind this, was patient enough to wait until they had 4 zero-day exploits before they deployed the worm. Now, most worms and viruses will attack a computer by turning the computer into a zombie. And later on, the zombie can join a botnet in order to have a concerted attack on a bank's system, or send out spam mail and whatnot. This one does not. This one does not turn a computer into a zombie. It does not go after personal information. What it does is it goes after industrial control software. Okay, so there are industrial control software or process monitoring software that you can purchase and install on a regular PC. For the most part, these software is just for monitoring purposes. So you can click on an icon and you can see the coolant temperature of your nuclear plant. You can check the radiation level of a certain room, and so on and so forth. But it can also be used to reprogram the PLCs. PLC stands for Programmable Logic Controller. These are tiny little devices about yay big, and they are used to control the actual conveyor belts, the coolant system, and so on and so forth. And they don't even run Windows. They have some really super proprietary software running on these things. Okay. Stuxnet will identify to see whether a computer has the industrial control software installed. If it does, it will talk to the industrial control software to try to reprogram the PLCs that are actually doing all the controls. In other words, if it was successful, Stuxnet would be able to infect PCs in a nuclear plant to the point that it will send instructions to reprogram the PLCs. Now, depending on how it reprograms the PLCs, it can easily cause a meltdown, or an explosion, or at least shut it down so that it would not be, the nuclear plant would take another 2 or 3 months to start up.
Yeah, if you cut off the power, the whole rod's automatically inserted. So.
But then it takes time to
Yeah.
to start it all over again. Yeah. Or you can shut off the coolant system. It can do a lot of things to kind of do at least some damage to the entire nuclear plant. So this was very interesting because this is definitely not something that was designed to get money. Okay, which is what most people do these days with malware, is to design software or worms and viruses to infect computers to either make money by spamming or make money by blackmailing financial institutions. This one was neither. It was specifically designed to shut down plants. That's basically all it is doing. And the sophistication of this particular worm was also unheard of. According to many antivirus companies, it is so sophisticated that it cannot be supported by the normal groups of people who make worms and viruses. Iran suspected that it was the work of an entire nation. It's a state, it's a country that's behind this particular worm. It's not like the mafia or individual hackers. What was also more interesting was the nuclear plant. I think the Iranians knew enough about computer security that the computers inside the plant was not internet connected. Okay, it was in a very closed environment where the internet could not reach. This one, according to the investigation, was spread by a USB thumb drive. So somebody, took a USB thumb drive with this thing into the plant, put it onto one computer, at least one computers in the plant. But inside the plant, the computers are no longer firewalled from each other because they're in the same subnet. So in that case, it becomes much easier to spread the virus inside the plant. So it was definitely an interesting case of how international politics, get intertwined with computer security and stuff like that.
So do they have a suspect country that they're looking at?
Well, I think they can rule out certain countries for sure. Most Western countries, can be ruled out, because either they don't have the capability or they don't have the guts.
Right.
You got to have the capabilities and the guts to do it. And, so I think they can narrow down the list pretty quickly to, like a single country.
I was listening to podcast Security Now where they were talking about the conflict worm and how they rounded down how they suspected that the source of the worm was somebody in the Ukraine because when he wrote his code, he ensured that none of the target IPs would be located.
Oh, it's excluded.
Yeah.
From the exclusion.
Right.
That is smart. That is so smart.
And it also shut itself down. It would not refer back to a mother server for updates if the keyboard detected was Ukrainian layout.
Interesting. That's kind of self-incriminating.
It is. But, one of the security analysts suspected that the reason for it is that if the worm ran wild and started infecting computers elsewhere in the world, it didn't matter. But if the Ukrainian police were alerted to the fact that this worm originated in the Ukraine, they'd come looking for the guy or guys, plural. So in order to protect their own interests, they figured, let's leave the cops in our own country alone and just pick on everybody else. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Or it could be somebody else's job to try to incriminate
The Ukrainians.
Yeah, exactly. So from now on, when people want to incriminate a particular country, they just have to do certain things to exclude that country from getting infected. So the reputation or the political damage will be more than the actual virus damage.
Right.
So that can be used as a very effective tool.
Think about it, against North Korea or whoever else is our, enemy of the day type of thing.
Yep. That's interesting. Now, how does that relate to this class? What do you guys think? This class is about programming, right? And this is not a security class, this is not a networking class, this is not a Windows class. So how does this relate to this class? Other than I'm interested. The professor is interested, obsessed with this. So other than that, how does this relate to this class? Why would it have any impact on you guys?
If you're aware of good algorithm procedures, then you're aware of how to program properly, and you can use algorithms to help you determine a strategy in combating something of this nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would think.
Okay, very good. That's one of the reasons. Well, I wouldn't mention it if it doesn't really affect your bottom line. And the bottom line is, can you get a job? And, what kind of a job can you get? Can your job be outsourced easily? Which means, they can fire you and hire somebody overseas and stuff like that. So what do you think in terms of how do we defend, how does, a country, an organization, a company defend against, worms and viruses like this?
Have all their computers on a closed loop, enforce extra security. I know somebody walked in with a thumb drive.
Mm-hmm.
You could have cold changing rooms. One of the places I worked at previously had a cold changing room where when I walked into that room, I basically had to disrobe, put on lab apparel,
Mm-hmm.
and they had metal detectors at the door so I couldn't get through.
Okay.
Then there was other checks.
Okay.
But something this serious should have serious security
Mm-hmm.
procedures. in
I'm
place.
pretty sure they do now.
They do that, yeah, but closing the barn door.
But from the software perspective, how do you stop? How can an organization stop something like this? From the software perspective,
Just keep it on a closed loop.
keep it in a closed loop. But how about the developers of the system? How can a worm get into a system to begin with? That's the first question. Yep, go ahead. Bugs in the software. Very good. So it all begins, everything kind of begins with the software that to be infected. Okay? The exploits have to exist in the first place in order for these worms and viruses to work. So now the question is, as a developer, okay, you guys are in this class because you're learning how to design and write algorithms, regardless of the programming language. So the first question is, how can you, in the future, write software that has no exploits, or as few as possible? That's the question. Okay. Now, to answer the question, that the answer is out of the scope of this class, because we have to talk about how arrays work, how things are organized in memory, and so on and so forth. But I can tell you, most of these exploits are because of careless or sloppy programming. Somebody did not think about certain cases, of running these subroutines or the algorithms, and as it turns out, some of these exceptional or exception cases will cause certain security. It will cause certain problems in terms of software security, and it will let a program to gain control by means of hacking. Okay, so in your other classes, hopefully you guys will learn how to write your programs correctly so that it does not contain the type of flaws that can be exploited. Okay. Now, on the other side, okay, this is on the side of defensive. The defensive side is to write better software that do not contain the exploits. But on the attacking side, how do you think people find these exploits?
Good programmers to just look at the code and figure out mistakes.
That only works with open source software. Now, in this case, the Stuxnet targets completely proprietary software, which is not open sourced.